Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Matt Lateplo, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our next live presentation from Barksdale Resources Corp. Before I introduce our speaker, a few points to note. Please submit your questions in the question box to the left of the slides. If you are interested in scheduling a meeting with Barksdale, please click on the Schedule Meetings tab found in the platform navigation bar. You'll be able to view the company's availability and submit a meeting request. On a final note, all of today's presentations will be recorded and available for 24/7 replay. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Rick Trotman, President and CEO of Barksdale Resources Corp., which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol BRKCF and on the TSXV under the symbol BRO. Welcome, Rick.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for the warm introduction. Good morning to everyone out there listening. It's my pleasure to be presenting to you today, especially as Barksdale comes into what is probably our most interesting and most exciting phase of growth, at least for the past 5 years since I've joined the company. Here in the next probably 6 to 8 weeks, we should be finishing off what has been a very long permitting process that will allow us to drill a very significant, very impressive base metal exploration asset in southern Arizona. So we are looking for copper, zinc, lead, and silver. And as I walk through the presentation, you'll get a better sense for what we're looking for, why we're looking for it, and where the value opportunities really lie with Barksdale. And hopefully, at the end of this, you'll be as impressed as I am, and you'll look at Barksdale as a potential new investment opportunity. So I will be making some forward-looking statements today, talking about things with potential and such. Please do your homework and invest responsibly. So Barksdale basically is an exploration company with two portfolios. We have an oxide copper resource in Mexico called San Javier, which is a source of great optionality for us. This is a resource sitting at surface that we are completing a preliminary economic assessment currently. So we should have some value numbers coming out here in the next month or two, depending on how fast these engineers finish their work. But the primary focus of the company, especially heading into the middle of 2023 and into the 2024, I would presume, is the Patagonia district in Arizona. And this is where we've created a portfolio of assets, a collection of properties, if you will, that are anchored by the Sunnyside project. It's a world-class exploration target sitting right next to a world-class carbonate replacement, lead, zinc, silver, copper asset. I'll walk you through the value proposition on that, and I think you will agree it's quite tremendous. So before we get into the actual assets and maps and things of that nature, I'll give you a bit on the capital structure and cash on hand, things of that nature. So we have a little over 80 million shares outstanding. That gives us roughly a $50 million Canadian market cap. We have a little less than $6 million in cash, which is more than enough for us to complete our works. We're not out for a financing right now. We have enough cash to basically get through this permitting process and start the drilling campaigns that we have planned. We have quite the list of shareholders. We've been permitting for multiple years, which while that is a bit of a downer for most investors because they don't like slow stories, it has given us an opportunity to go out and cultivate a great list of corporations, institutional investors, and high net worth individuals that have kind of gobbled up shares looking out into the long term. And hopefully that patience and foresight will pay off for these investors in a significant way. But roughly, we have a quarter of the shares outstanding in the hands of corporates, including Teck Resources, which is a major diversified mining company based here in Canada, and Osisko Development Corp., which is a large exploration company in its own right. We have another roughly quarter of our shares in the hands of funds, which includes some large U.S. institutional funds that are focused on mining, such as Crescat and U.S. Global, as well as a number of Canadian institutional funds and European institutional funds that have been building positions slowly. On top of that, we have high net worth individuals that own nearly 20% of the company. And this includes Eric Sprott and a few others, including one person that owns a 9.9% position here. On the management and insider side, we own roughly 5% of the stock. I personally control 1.4 million shares, which I've bought entirely on market or through the exercise of management incentive options. So we have, a considerable stake here. No founder shares for myself. I came in a little late to the story for that fun stuff. So I'm kind of linked at the hip with, the investors that are in here with kind of that 35 to 45 cent cost base on a Canadian standpoint. The recent share price performance has been quite good. As I said, we have some great shareholders in the register, so they tend to be patient. They tend to not buy on market too often. So it means that we have, not the best liquidity, but that does mean that when we have, eventful news that comes out, positive news, that we tend to respond quite well. Last year, as we started checking off the boxes and moving towards finishing out these catalysts, including the permitting at Sunnyside, our stock trended up. We actually finished the year as one of the best performers on the OTCQX. Indeed, we were named one of the OTCQX best market top 50 stocks for the year. Hopefully, we can outperform that this year and give investors another reason to really like our stock. On a corporate side, we've got a very good management team in place. I won't go through this in detail, but you can view it at your leisure on our website, which is barksdaleresources.com. Regarding myself, just the 10-second, 50,000-foot view. I am a geologist by background with exploration experience in both Mexico and the United States. After doing a bit of exploring, I went off to equity research in New York City, and then ultimately into the private equity world for resource capital funds, where I invested probably something on the order of $400 million into the mining space, looking at exploration opportunities and development opportunities all around the world. So I'm, an inch deep and a mile wide, as they say, and Barksdale is kind of my one true love. So this is where I think the best opportunity for me to generate wealth, lies, and hopefully I can convince some of you that there's a great opportunity here as well. So with respect to the projects, we have, as I mentioned before, two portfolios. We have the copper oxide story down in Mexico, which is called San Javier. That's on the lower right-hand side of the slide. That's located just right off the main highway, a couple hours east of the capital of Hermosillo. And then about a 5-hour drive to the north from San Javier is the Patagonia district. So just over the border between Mexico and the United States. This is where most of the action is going to occur in 2023 for our company. Zooming in on the Patagonia district, you'll see a number of different shaded colors here. We control all of the properties in the dark blue. We have been assembling this property package for the past couple of years with some major transactions with very large mining companies such as Rio Tinto and Teck Resources. We own or control roughly half of the mineral claims in the district. And you'll notice that there's a light gray color in here. Those are the mineral claims and land position of a company called South 32, which is a major diversified mining company that purchased these claims back in mid-2018 for $2.1 billion Canadian in the acquisition of a company called Arizona Mining. The reason that they acquired this property is because right in the corner of our Sunnyside property and their property, there was a major discovery made. one of the world's largest carbonate replacement deposits. And for the non-geologists, these are large polymetallic deposits with generally high concentrations of massive sulfides, including economic minerals such as zinc, lead, silver, copper, and such. And as you can see from this slide, this dark gray blob that sits immediately adjacent to our blue property package, this is the rough surface outline of what's called the Taylor deposit, which is that polymetallic mineral resource. It's one of, if not the largest carbonate replacement deposit in the world. It's a top 10 undeveloped silver asset in the world, as well as a top 10 undeveloped lead zinc asset in the world. And as you can see, it immediately sits adjacent to our property and abruptly ends at that property boundary. Now, we know that Mother Nature doesn't work on these straight lines. Indeed, that deposit keeps on trucking. It goes onto our property. And how do we know that? Well, back in the 1980s, a company called the Sarco controlled all of these properties and actually drilled the discovery holes for the Taylor deposit on our side of the fence. As you can see, these black dots with the little black lines, these are drill hole traces of what were the initial discovery holes at the Sunnyside project. And you can see those results down here in the bottom left-hand side. They're quite impressive. These are high-grade intercepts, 17 meters of 17% combined lead zinc with a percent copper and over 10 ounces per ton silver, in addition to another intercept of 38 meters of 15% lead zinc, et cetera, et cetera. These are, two of many intercepts that were recorded within these three drill holes and show that this deposit keeps itself intact as it continues to the west. And our thesis is that the Sunnyside porphyry, this big yellow blob in the center of our land package, was effectively the heat source that caused the emplacement of all the mineralization that you see off to the east. And so between the property boundary and this source porphyry, we think that we have very prospective ground and a lot of room effectively to build potentially high-grade resource. And we call this our target priority area. You can see it here in this kind of different tint blue. So this is several square kilometers. From the edge of this Taylor deposit out to the east, back to the porphyry, you're looking at a distance of roughly 4 kilometers. So this is a very large area with lots of room to create high-grade resources. The next step for us on a corporate standpoint is to come in here and test these high priority targets. We are in the middle of finishing up what has been effectively a 4-year permitting process to get in here to drill. We received our draft permit approval back at the end of January, which triggered a series of statutory timeframe objection and objection response periods. We are now through the objection periods and the first objection response period, and within the next 30 days, we will be finished with that entire process. So we expect to receive our final permits at some point in June, which will allow us to come in here and start drilling on this project. Now, to look at this project in 3 dimensions. So this is effectively a vertical slice through the earth. You'll note that there's a blue property line that goes right down the center of the page. Everything on the left are properties that we control. Everything on the right are properties that South32 controls. And you'll see the big Sunnyside porphyry sitting off to the left. That's that blue blob. That was the heat engine that caused the formation of all of these accessory deposits such as skarns, montos, and chimneys. So South32, before the end of Q2 of 2023, so that's here in the next 2 months, they will be or forecasting to be making their construction decision on this property. Since acquiring it in 2018, they've put a significant amount of hundreds of millions of US dollars into advancing the project. There's a $1.7 billion US capital to build. It will be a very large underground deposit. and they should be making that decision here shortly. So hopefully that will be good news for us, because ultimately, if they start construction, we will be effectively in the shadow of their new head frame. And as you can see here, there's effectively a kilometer scale gap between the edge of the porphyry and the property boundary. And that's where we're going to focus our initial drilling. This is all prime real estate to add high grade tons that could down the road be very valuable and quite coveted by our neighbor who will be building the mine next door. And this is a three-dimensional equation here. So, it's a kilometer scale gap from an east-west direction, but anywhere that we have the right host rocks all around this porphyry, that's where we're looking to, be able to build those potential high-grade tons. This is quite the dated photo, but it kind of illustrates what we're looking at surface. This is actually the fence that represents the property boundary between our property and theirs. All of this white shaded territory is their property. All of the non-shaded property is ours. And you can see that there's quite a large amount of activity going on here. There's a dry stack tailings facility already in place on their property, 2 water treatment plants. They're finishing off a well field that they'll use to dewater the underground so that they can start sinking their shafts once they make this construction decision. There's 2 underground portal access. There's a whole series of office buildings, workshops, et cetera, et cetera. So they spent hundreds of millions of dollars de-risking and pushing this project forward. Meanwhile, we have been permitting for several years to allow us to come and basically find the rest of this deposit. Now, how much we'll find, what the grade is, that's the geologic risk that we're ultimately going to have to take. The great thing is that we're starting with a fantastic series of data. We know that the deposit continues. We know that there is high grade mineralization present on our property. Our focus will be to figure out how much more is sitting there. Do we have the other half of this deposit? Do we have, an additional 20% to what they have? We have several square kilometers of potential here. So, lots of space to find more. And that's going to be what we start drilling here in the next, 2 to 3 months, depending on when the permits come in and when we can mobilize those drill rigs. But, this is the closest we've ever been to having a drill on this property. So the excitement builds day by day. Now, shifting focus a bit and moving further south into Sonora, Mexico. This is where we have our San Javier copper gold project. It's effectively a collection of small mineral concessions that have a series of outcropping copper deposits on them. This is a 2-hour drive along a paved highway back to the capital city of Hermosillo. It's got great infrastructure. It's basically next to a little pueblo called San Javier, which is a mining town. There's a whole series of underground metallurgical coal mines in this area that most of the townspeople work in. So it's a great source of potential mining labor. And I would also note that this entire district is effectively controlled, minus our property package, by one of our larger shareholders, Osisco Development Corp. They're immediately next door, and they have built a operating gold mine called San Antonio. And so we've got friends in the district, and we're currently pushing this project forward at a preliminary economic assessment level. And the nature of the mineralization here is quite evident from this cross section. Again, this is a slice through the earth looking at the deposit in kind of the peripheral, like in a side view. You'll notice it's tabular style mineralization sitting right at the top of a hill. So mining this would ultimately be a pretty easy endeavor, taking off the top of this hill. This type of mineralization is amenable to heap leach processing, which means that you stack it onto a lined pad, you trickle acid over the mineralization, and the copper leaches out and is ultimately plated into big copper sheets on site. It's a low-cost copper production methodology and affords itself to pretty low capital costs and it's pretty easy from a technical standpoint. So we're working on that PEA now. Some of the benefits of this deposit is, first and foremost, that it's still open to grow. It's open in most directions, and we have 2 additional prospects that could further increase resources. It's got a very low strip ratio, so meaning that most of the rock that is here is mineralized with copper. And the recovery levels that we're seeing with our column test work show very good recovery data from the oxide coppers. And so the Cerro Verde deposit in the background of this photo here, this is where our resource sits. This is open to expansion. This is what our PEA will focus on. In addition to it, we have 2 other targets in the district, Mesa Grande and La Trinidad, in the middle ground and on the bottom of the photo here. Both have historic drilling with, great hits of copper. Sorry, I'm kind of stuttering here. And so these would be the series of prospects that we would look to explore to further build the tons here available to go onto the resource pad. So we should have that PEA done here in the next, I would say, 4 weeks. And once we kind of go through it, validate all the numbers, we will take that out to market and show our investors what the expected value is there. And so that is Barksdale in a nutshell. Again, we trade on the TSXV under the symbol BRO, as well as on the OTCQX under the symbol BRKCF. You can find additional information on our website at barksdaleresources.com. And if you go to our website, you can also sign up for one-on-one meetings with either myself or Terry Ann Willicke, our VP of Communications. We try to answer every question that's asked of us, so don't be bashful, reach out, and we will try to get everything answered. So thanks for listening to my presentation. I think that we have some time left here, so I will move on to the Q&A. So just bear with me here for a second as I bring up that box and look through some of the questions that have been answered. All right. So first question here is, can you speak to your key milestones and drill programs for 2023? Sure. So we have a couple of different milestones kind of lined up for the next couple of months. The biggest of those, I would say, is finishing off the permitting process at Sunnyside. Like I mentioned earlier, the Forest Service needs to basically respond to objections before the end of this month, being May, and can finish off that permit in June. And so once we have a signed plan of operations, that will allow us to get onto the ground and complete our first drilling program. That's going to be the key focus for this year for us. So right now we're busy putting all the plans in place, getting the logistics ironed out of, who is going to be drilling these holes for us, where are we going to be logging it, cutting it, sampling it, doing all of that work, staffing up, getting our geology team assembled. That's all going on right now. So here, before mid-year, I would say having that permit is the key milestone. Also, before the middle of the year, we'll have our PEA out on the San Javier project. And that will be a key one for us because it'll give the project economics. After the middle of the year, what you can expect from us are regular updates that include basically drill results. So at Sunnyside, we will have up to 2 drill rigs turning at any one time, and we'll be putting out to market all of the assay results from that program. So those should be pretty regular and hopefully quite exciting. Let's see here. Next question. Are you concerned about the very recent reforms in the Mexican mining law? Yes, definitely concerned. For those that do not know, Mexico has put in place a couple of, I would say, non-mining friendly reforms into into the Mexican mining law, or at least recommendations for future mining law amendments. One of those is that the permitting agency has effectively come out and said that they are not going to be permitting any open pit mines during the rest of this current presidential term. That goes through, I believe it is next summer. So basically for the next year, they're not going to be permitting any open pit mines. In Mexico, they're going to have their presidential election next summer. My guess, and I think a lot of folks, around's guess, is that the next, government that comes into place will probably not be as unfriendly to mining, and will kind of reform some of these changes that have occurred under the current president, including the ban on mineral claim staking, which has been in place for 5 years now. So I think it's upside from here. Luckily, we're at an early stage in our project, PEA level. Applying for permits to push that towards a mining scenario would not come for several years anyway, so it's not something that we have to worry about too deeply at this stage. The next question here is, I thought oxide copper inhibits gold leach production and vice versa. Anglo-Asians experience in Azerbaijan as an example. Yeah, you are indeed correct. So on an oxide copper heap leach pad, the recovery of gold is pretty difficult. There are different types of reagents that need to go through the pad in order to recover copper versus gold. The opportunity at San Javier, and it's not one that's going into this PEA, is that there is a leach zone up high in the deposit that contains gold but low copper. And our neighbors next door at Cisco Development Corp are planning on building a gold heap leach pad and processing facility that has the ability to recover copper from their gold heap leach, because the copper is low in that system, and it needs to be processed differently. There's basically a SART facility. So we have the potential, and the economics need to be studied further, but to ship material over to their processing plant and potentially have it processed there. Or if there's a significant amount of gold ultimately at our project, to have a separate facility on a small scale. Let's see. Plans for your Four Metals project. So Four Metals is our project in the Patagonia district in Arizona. It has we just took ownership of this at 100% level, I think last week. It was on a 4-year option that we finished off. It has a copper-bearing breccia pipe sitting effectively at surface. It outcrops. It's called Red Hill, is the feature on the map. It's quite prominent. You can see it from a great distance, and it's called Red Hill because the sulfide mineralization is basically weathering at surface. Our plans there are to basically go through all of the core that we have on that project, probably resample and reassay that eventually, and look to permit an exploration program there to see if we can't make that breccia system larger from a footprint standpoint. That, I will say, is not going to be prioritized over our Sunnyside drilling program. So it's something that we will tackle kind of on the side, being cognizant that most of the value that we can derive from our property package in Arizona is going to be from Sunnyside at this point. So we will permit other drilling projects there, but we will be cognizant of our time and funds when it comes to going through the different permitting avenues on all those different prospects. So they'll form a pipeline, and we'll tackle them on a drilling basis when we have the permits in hand and the funds in hand. So that's the end of the questions that I have here. I'd like to thank all of you for participating here, for hearing me drone on about this company and this project that I love so much. Again, if you would like to get any further information, please go to our website. Please reach out to the management team. We'd be happy to chat with you on the phone or answer any of your questions. And again, our stock trades under the symbol BRO on the TSXV and BRKCF on the OTCQX. thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and have a great day.